रति सुख सारे गतमभिसारे रति सुख सारे गतमभिसारे मदन मनोहर वेशम्
नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। व्यासं वसिष्ठनप्तारं शक्तेः पौत्रम् अकल्मषं पराशरात्मजं वन्दे शुकतातं तपोनिधिं। व्यासाय विष्णुरूपाय व्यासरूपाय विष्णवे नमो वै ब्रह्मनिधये वासिष्ठाय नमो नमः। We are now going to analyze two very significant characters in the Pandavas, Bhima and Arjuna. Well, there is a very interesting note that Vyasa adds to the birth of Bhima. Kunti, she prayed to Vayudeva, and as a result of it, upon impregnation and later gestation and delivery, we had Bhima who was born. When Bhima was born, she was unable to hold the little baby in her hands because of the might what the child, the little infant, was exhibiting. She couldn't even withstand. She withdrew her hands and the child fell on the rock. She was standing atop a cliff and it fell on the rock. Vyasa says the rock broke into 1,000 pieces. So Bhima, a lot of our preceptors imply that he was like a germinating tulsi plant, because a tulsi has a very, very distinct smell, and that odor, that fragrance to tulsi, it doesn't come later. As it shoots out, you can smell. So was Bhima's strength. Bhima, of course, from his very boyhood days, tasted enmity with Duryodhana. He was fed with poison in his food. He was pushed into the water, saved by the Nagas. But his role comes, or probably we understand his valor when he fights some of the tough demons. One was Hidimba. While they were on the exile, that was in incognito, not the second part, which is the Ajñātavāsam. This was when the palace of inflammable materials was burnt and they had to go to Ekachakrānagaram. On their way, he killed Hidimba. And Hidimba was a very powerful cannibal and he killed him. During his stay, or their stay at Ekachakrānagaram, the family that was hosting them, it was their turn to sacrifice one of their family members to Bakasura, who lived in a close by cave. He used to consume human flesh. So that is when Kunti says, none of you have to do it. I will send my son Bhima to check who that Bakasura is. Bhima goes. It's a very interesting chapter called Bakasura Vadham. Whatever liquor, whatever meat was meant and cooked for Bakasura, all of it Bhima consumed. Bakasura was supremely angry. He came out of the cave and he started having a duel, fight, Dvandva Yuddham with Bhima. And of course, we know the result. Bhima killed Bakasura, Bakasura died. So this is another incident. There is another incident of Kirmira, a demon again, a Rakshasa, who fought fiercely with Bhima and Bhima killed him too. In Virata Parva, that 1 year of incognito, Bhima managed to live and serve the kingdom as a cook. He loved the food, because it is said in Mahābhārata that whatever food used to be gathered by the Pandavas and were collated, put together, Kunti would reserve 50% of it to Bhima. The rest of the 50% is what Kunti, Arjuna, Yudhishthira, Nakula and Sahadeva used to consume. So he was a glutton. Probably his body structure, his body constitution demanded that quantity of food, but that is how he was. So here we find that in that 1 year of incognito, he served as a cook. This cook knew where Draupadi was. Draupadi was serving as a Sairandrikastri, as a hairdresser to the queen of that kingdom. To that queen there was a very, very strong, violent, rude, nasty, uncultured, uncivilized brother called Kichaka. So this Kichaka spotted Draupadi, expressed his love, and he made attempts to molest her. That is when she goes and complains to Bhima, and Bhima says, "Do not worry, I will take care." He asks her to bring Kichaka to the inner apartment, and assuming this is Draupadi, Kichaka pounces on her, but understands this is not a her, it's him. Bhima and Kichaka have a huge duel, and Bhima manages to kill Kichaka. So these are some of the places where he has shown his valor. Of course, in Jarasandha, the king of Magadha, he takes Krishna along, and with lot of difficulty, finally, while he is able to split the body of Jarasandha into two, Mahabharata says, Krishna hinted at Bhima that he has to exchange the body parts. He has to throw it in the opposite directions, and he threw it that way. And Jarasandha was also killed. How was he as a character? Very quick to get angry. So during Draupadi's Vastrapaharana, it is he who stands first and vows that he shall break the thigh of Duryodhana, tear open the chest of Dushyasana, and use the oozing blood from his chest to smear the long hair locks of Draupadi. So he never had the ability to control his emotions. He was very quick to react, and Bhima achieved, promised, as vowed, he accomplished Draupadi's wishes. In Vanaparva, there is one place called Saugandhika Parvam, where she desired the Saugandhika Pushpam, Draupadi. And on his sojourn, he finds a monkey lying down on the ground. While he wants the monkey to move, the monkey refuses to move. And in order to showcase his strength to the monkey, he tries to push the tail, lift the tail, nothing of it happens. Later he realizes it is Hanuman who is now present as a monkey. He receives the blessings of Hanuman in return. So Bhima has been blessed by Hanuman, has been blessed by Krishna, has showcased his power, very quick to react. So this is how Bhima is in a brief. Now let's go to another important character who's Arjuna. Now Arjuna, like how I narrated the incident of Bhima's birth, while Kunti invoked the grace of Indra, she was blessed with a little baby called Arjuna. This Arjuna, while she was holding him in his hand, the rishis in the forest, through their divya drishti, through their penance, through their austerities, were able to see that somebody special was born, because they thought Arjuna was special more than the others, because they knew, they could foresee that he will be the one who will be the recipient, the direct recipient of the quintessence of Upanishads. Sarvopanishado gavaha dugdha gopalanandanaha partho vatsaha sudhir bhokta dugdham geetamritam mahat. So understanding this, all the rishis start coming from various directions to that place where Arjuna was born. So here we have Jamadagni, we have Vasishtha, Vishwamitra, all of them coming. So Vasishtha and Vishwamitra, they all come in the Vakaram, in alphabetically Va, Vasishtha, V, Vishwamitra. The root letter is Va. So while arranging the names, Vyasacharya could have said Jamadagni Vasishtho Vishwamitrascha. But you know what he does? He says Vasishtaha Jamadagnir Vishwamitrascha. So he inserts the word Jamadagni. This is not the Jamadagni that we know of from Parashurama's father. That Jamadagni was killed by Kartavirya. This is another Jamadagni. So while listing it down, he says these are the rishis. Why? Because Vyasacharya feels this is already a book on a war. And here if I have two warring people, Vasishtha and Vishwamitra together, the words will start quarreling, so let me insert a word. So Arjuna's birth even blessed or bestowed wisdom on the composer. So Arjuna from a very young age, he was very focused. While he was under the tutelage of Dronacharya, every now and then his practice sessions was way ahead than the other princes. While Ashwathama was given a partial treatment by his father, the father Dronacharya couldn't escape the dexterity of Arjuna, because Arjuna was that smart. So this kind of a smart Arjuna, later we have this incident that all the princes were asked to focus on a bird. The others were asked, what do you see in front of you? Some said, I see a tree with many leaves, I see the tree with a few flowers, I see the tree with branches spread everywhere. Nobody even got close to Arjuna. You know what Arjuna said? I see the eye of the bird that is seated on the branch of the tree. So he was very specific. Here is a tree, there is a branch, there is a bird, there is its eye. So he knew where the focus was. He knew where to put his concentration on. Very focused from his birth. But we do come across one or two scenarios where he may have felt slightly insecure. One is while they were exhibiting their talents, the school of Arjuna, Dronacharya's school students were exhibiting their talents. That is when Karna comes into picture and showcases his skill as well. That is when some amount of insecurity could have crept into the mind of Arjuna. There's another instance where when all the princes were walking by the woods, that is when they find that their hunting dog's mouth was covered with arrows but not with a single drop of blood oozing. Its barking was controlled, but it was not killed. So to understand who would have done this, they find that it was a tribal boy called Ekalavya who did this. So that is another place where we feel that Arjuna could have felt a bit insecure. Of course, he was very mighty, he was very strong, he was very, very skilled. But yes, as human beings, you may feel insecure at certain moments. Now, was he a recipient of grace? Amongst the Pandavas, yes. Krishna directs him to the forest to receive missiles. And he says the only way that you can get is to impress upon Lord Shiva. So Arjuna's penance to Lord Shiva is a highly spoken of event where Shiva comes to test his skill in the disguise of a hunter, along with Parvati, who comes as the wife of the hunter. So this meeting of the hunter and Arjuna, the war that ensued between them and the truce that happened after it, becomes the topic of a beautiful work called Kiratarjuniyam by Bharavi. So Shiva tests Arjuna's dexterity and says, here I bless you with the Pashupatastra. So the missile of Lord Shiva was given by Lord Shiva, being impressed upon by Arjuna's sincerity in performing the penance. Alongside, we also see him as a recipient of Krishna's grace. On one side, Shiva has blessed him. On the other side, Krishna has blessed him. What is the biggest blessing? Who could have ever imagined that Krishna will be the charioteer to Arjuna. If it's the vice versa, nothing surprising. Here Krishna, already a very strong king of Dwarakadish, he becomes the charioteer to Arjuna. He becomes Partha Sarathi. Second, the abundant blessings of Krishna is visible when he becomes the recipient to Bhagavad Gita. That one incident, Arjuna Uvacha, he has the right to question Paramatma. Whoever could even dream of that? And he is a recipient of the cosmic form, the Vishwarupa of Krishna, which was not that easily visible. Divyam dadami te chakshuhu. I shall give you special divine eyes, says Krishna. Well, we know of Arjuna's skills, concentration, and the blessings that he has received on one side. Was he a man of character? For that, let us take up 2-3 incidents. The first of the incidents is the Tirtha Yatra incident. Arjuna, while he was married to Draupadi, that itself is a beautiful, it's an exemplification of his valor. The contest was that the arrow should be shot at the eye of the revolving fish which was attached to the ceiling, whose reflections fell on the waters below. So looking at the reflection of the fish that was attached to the ceiling in the waters below, the Kshatriya has to hit at the eye of the fish. So that was a very calculated approach, and Arjuna did that effortlessly. So Drupada was more than happy in getting married, giving his daughter Draupadi in marriage to the Brahmana, because at that point in time nobody knew that it was Arjuna who did this act. So as he was taken to Kunti's ashrama, he said, "Here I brought a bhogya vastu." So as usual, she said, "Since you brought something that needs to be experienced, distribute, share." And that is when she was absolutely shocked to see that it was Draupadi. She admonished, but nothing worked. So Yudhishthira said, the words of the mother have to be upkept. There have been precedents. Krishna has spoken to me, so all 5 have to marry her. Later, when they returned to Indraprastha, that is when Narada comes and says, "See, this will become the cause of a huge worry amongst you brothers, because all 5 are married to one lady. Don't you think that there will be repercussions because of this in your domestic life?" They kind of agreed. That is when Narada said, "You need to have a memorandum of understanding between you and Draupadi." So the understanding was, if Draupadi manages to be the wife of Yudhishthira for that 1 year, the other brothers will not interfere and they will never ever barge into their private moments. But it did so happen due to an administrative cause where there was an urgency that Arjuna had to run and open the doors of the private apartment of Yudhishthira and Draupadi. This is where Arjuna says, after having received advice from Yudhishthira, that I have committed a mistake despite knowing that I should have not barged into the privacy of you and Draupadi. So I shall go on a Tirtha Yatra. Yudhishthira says, "Don't do that. It's okay, you're just my younger brother. Mistakes do happen. You don't have to do a Prayashchittam." But Arjuna says, "I will do a Prayashchittam." So as a Prayashchittam, he goes on a Tirtha Yatra. This is where we come across Arjuna going to many cities, and he comes down. He goes, gets married to Chitrangada, produces a son called Babruvahana, then he marries Ulupi, Nagakanyaka. Of course, his Tirtha Yatra was a mix of religious and spiritual causes as well as some material causes. Arjuna then comes along the west coast, and upon Krishna's advice, he comes in the disguise of a sannyasi and is married to Subhadra. So his marriage to Subhadra itself was absolutely pre-planned by Krishna. So Arjuna listened to what Krishna said, not because he treated him as God, because they found a very, very unique friendship. That's how our acharyas opine that the avatar of Nara Narayana, where the Lord came as Narayana, the Guru, as well as Nara, the student. Here it is again Narayana who's Krishna and Nara who's Arjuna. This is one incident, Tirthayatra incident. The second, on his sojourn to acquire the missiles, he goes to Amaravati, the capital of Swarga, and there he impresses upon Indra, and Indra says, I will give you all the missiles, but you promise me that you shall enjoy the comforts here, stay here for a few days. It was after all his biological son. Otherwise Indra in our Purānās generally doesn't seem hospitable to anybody. So as he was staying in the place of Indra, Indra advised him that he has to undergo training in dance and music. Arjuna was surprised. As a Kshatriya, I should know Dhanurvidya. So many other allied sciences. What is dance and music going to help me now? But Indra said, don't ask me questions now, but I foresee that there is a need for you to learn these two art forms. So he learnt from Chitrasena, and one day, and all during his practice sessions, there was one personality who was trying to peep from the crevices and see the might of Arjuna. So one day Arjuna said, I would like to meet with Urvashi. She was a celebrated damsel of Amaravati, Swargaloka. Urvashi was equally surprised and very impressed. She was excited to meet the best of the warrior of all times. So she dressed herself, decked up with all ornaments, and then she walked further. People were gathered around to check what Arjuna is going to say, what Urvashi is going to say, whether there is going to be a love moment. You know what Arjuna did? He fell at the feet of Urvashi and said, Mate, my dear mother. She was absolutely surprised. She had done all this adorning to just impress upon Arjuna, and here he addresses her as a mother. Why did you call me a mother? Actually, you are not my mother. You are related to me even more than that, as a grandmother or a great grandmother. She was all the more surprised. How? Because you had a relationship with one of my forefathers called Pururavas, and you produced a child, so you are related to me that way. That is when Urvashi stalks on Arjuna and tells that, I wish that I could marry you, accept me. Arjuna keeps telling again and again, no, I cannot marry you, this relationship can never happen, because you are the mother to one of our predecessors. How can I marry you? So that is where she says, it is because of the pride that you are the best amongst men, the great warrior, the handsome, the well-built warrior that you are, you showcase this kind of arrogance. May you lose that manhood for some time. That is when he seeks some emancipation from her, wherein she says that you can choose that year, and that year becomes his year of Ajñātavāsam. So even to a lady like Urvashi, who approaches herself, Arjuna knew that it was ethically wrong to have a relationship with her. There is another instance. I spoke about him receiving the curse. During their year of incognito, he became the dance teacher to the princess of Matsya Desha. She was called Uttara Kumari or Uttara. So Arjuna became a eunuch, and he was a hermaphrodite, and he was called as Brihannala. Brihannala was teaching dance and music to Uttara, and Uttara was highly impressed by the skills of Brihannala. And it does so happen that when I spoke of Bhima, I said Kichaka was killed. The moment the death of Kichaka reaches the ears of Shakuni and Duryodhana and Hastinapura, they feel that there is something fishy. Because they knew if Kichaka has to be killed, Duryodhana says if Kichaka has to be killed, it has to be either through me or Bhima. Only two of us can vanquish him on a duel. If Kichaka is killed and I am here, then Bhima must be there. So they all marched to the kingdom of Matsyadesha to fight the king and especially find out the Pandavas. Understanding that the army is approaching, Uttara Kumara, the prince of that region, initially says that I am going to take care of this, and he goes. Brihannala becomes the Sarathi. What Brihannala does is Arjuna, now Brihannala is Arjuna. Arjuna takes Uttara Kumara to a graveyard, to a Shami tree, and says there is a dead body hanging there, bring it down. He says, how can I touch a dead body? It is absolutely impure, unhygienic. No, you get it down. As they open, they are surprised to find the best of weapons. The Gada of Bhima, the spear of Yudhishthira, the swords of Nakula Sahadeva, the Gandiva of Arjuna, the quiver of arrows of Arjuna, all were lying. That is when Brihannala says, these are all mine, these are all ours, I am Arjuna. But he fails to accept. He says, if you tell that you are Arjuna, tell me what are the 10 names of Arjuna. That is when he says Vijaya, Gudakesha, Savyasachi, Partha, Arjuna, and so on. So that is when he accepts. And Arjuna single-handedly vanquishes the entire battalion that has been fighting from Hastinapura's side. So be it Bhima, Bhishma, be it Drona, be it Kripa, be it Karna, be it Duryodhana, be it Dushasana, they all fall on the ground. So when he reaches the court back, the king says, I am so happy that all of you were in my region, but I am so sad that I couldn't be hospitable because I didn't know who you were. Hey Arjuna, please accept my daughter Uttara as your wife. Now Arjuna says, see, I am her teacher and she is my student. And if every teacher starts marrying the student, this world will be a place of no ethics at all. I have treated her just like my daughter. Now that you're insisting, I can surely accept her, but not as a daughter, not as a wife, but as a daughter-in-law. I will get her married to my son born of Subhadra called Abhimanyu. Let them marry. So Uttara was married to Abhimanyu. So this is another instance where we generally know that Arjuna is a person who may be flirting with women. Here he shows what a man of character he was. His love for Bhishma. Arjuna had a special love for Bhishma, and Bhishma too had a special corner of love for Arjuna. So much so that the first 10 days of the war just went in them fighting casually, taking no cognizance of how dramatic and how serious the war was. So it is at that point in time Arjuna needed the prodding of Krishna, who said, if you are not killing him, if you are not fighting him, I will do it. So Arjuna at that point in time seeks Sharanagati and says, please Krishna, forgive. I will do it. You should not get any bad name, repute because of this. Later Arjuna was also, when we see Mahabharata, yes, he was very strong, very handsome, very powerful, very influential, but we also find him to be a person who will make hasty decisions. One such decision is when he understands that Jayadratha was the cause of his son's death. He says that I shall kill Jayadratha tomorrow before the sun sets. If I fail to do so, I shall fall into fire. All these, if this, then this, if this, then not this, all this was not required for a Kshatriya, but Arjuna would always say, because he was so confident of his valor. Same is the case later in Bhagavatam when it comes, where he visits Krishna in Dwaraka and gets to see a Brahmana losing children. And as the Brahmana seeks help, he should have consulted with Krishna. Even without consulting with Krishna, he says, hey Brahmana, you continue producing your children. For your next child, to that child, it will not go missing. I will offer protection. If I fail to do so, I shall fall into fire. Okay, he has promised twice to fall into fire. What happened? Every time it was Krishna who rescued. The first time it is said that he either covered the sun with a big ball of smoke, or he covered it with the chakra, or with his Sankalpa Shakti, which is divine will, and then told Arjuna, there lies the sun which is still not set, and here is Jayadratha, kill him. Same is the case with the Brahmana episode in Dwaraka, where Krishna says, sit on my chariot, I shall take you, crosses all the Vaitarani Viraja, and then takes him to Karya Vaikuntham, shows all the children who were lying there and brings them all back. So this is another charitram that we are all reminded of. So Arjuna comes to us as a very strong person, but at the same time, we also understand that Arjuna made certain hasty decisions. Only because of Krishna's presence was he able to manage or mitigate the problems that he was to face. Namaste. Next set of characters we are going to analyze is of very, very high importance to our analysis of Mahabharata. Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, Karna and Shakuni. Let's take Duryodhana and Karna once, and prior to that let's take Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was blind. It was no fault of his. In fact, when we look at Mahabharata, we see it could have been the fault of his mother Ambika, because Ambika, when she was asked to have a relationship with Vyasacharya, Krishna Dvaipayana, to produce children who will be the torchbearers of the kingdom, after having lived with a very, very handsome, strong king like Vichitravirya, she was shocked to see Krishna Dvaipayana, because Krishna Dvaipayana didn't look any of the Kshatriya kings. He was a normal person. He looked dark. So looking at him, she was surprised, shocked. That shock was evident when she closed her eyes. So Vyasacharya the next day said that you will be having a son who will have a lot of body strength, physical strength. That body strength was visible in one instance. But since you closed your eyes, your child will also bear the brunt of it. He will have no eyes. His sight will not function. His eyes will not function. Now I did say that this child who was born will have lot of strength. That is Dhritarashtra. He was blind, he was very strong. But where do we see him fight? We don't see him fight. But towards the end of Mahabharata, after the Yuddham was over, while the Pandavas were brought in the presence of Dhritarashtra, Dhritarashtra was completely dejected, depressed, shocked and saddened to know that none of his sons survived. And he knew that Duryodhana, whom he showered his love on, Dushyasana, whom he loved a lot, all of these were killed by Bhima. So Krishna, he asks a huge statue of the similar structure and stamina of Bhima to be made, and tells Bhima, you keep this statue in front of Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra, assuming that it was Bhima who was standing in front, embraces him and with all his might wants to crush him. That is when the statue breaks into 1,000 pieces, an iron statue. So all his anger was brought down only then. So Krishna kept that as a speed breaker. So this is the case with Dhritarashtra. Another case that we find of Dhritarashtra which saddens us is his greed for the kingdom. Of course, a Kshatriya's primary duty is to administer. But to administer, you necessarily don't have to be only the king. You could be even a caretaker, a guardian, a warrior, a commander-in-chief. That is also a duty of Kshatriya. But here we had Dhritarashtra, who did not realize that a kingdom in those days needed a very able administrator who was physically fit to fight in a war. And so his younger brother Pandu was made. But this somehow ignited the spirit of vengeance, disgust, wrath. And this continued for a long time. And how long did it continue? Well, whether it continued or not, it got bigger when he produced sons. And Duryodhana became a replica of greed and avarice of Dhritarashtra. So that is why Dhritarashtra did not find anything wrong in what Duryodhana did or sought. When he said these Pandavas have to be sent to Varanavatam, the palace of inflammable materials, where the palace has to be burnt along with the 5 Pandavas and the mother, the king agreed. Of course, he does offer 1 or 2 sentences telling that this is wrong and things like that, but then when nothing is heard, he supports Duryodhana. Duryodhana becomes his weak point. When Draupadi was in her periods and was brought to the court, and there was no other go where Dushasana started stripping her, Dhritarashtra asks, is it over? So as a king, he should have stopped, he should have fought for the lady's cause, but he says, is it over? So he was also enjoying the very process of humiliating the sons of Pandu, and especially the daughter-in-law, the daughter of Draupadi. So most of our commentators have a very negative feeling about Dhritarashtra because he was absolutely blind to his son's activities of jealousy, greed, wrath, disgust, vengeance. He absolutely turned a blind eye there. So, and as a person who was physically blind, externally blind, that is okay. He can't do much about it. There are people who have achieved a lot of things by being blind, but what he did as a blind king to his children and to subjects is unforgivable. Do we see his intent elsewhere? Yes, when Krishna wants to come as a messenger, he says, let's lure Krishna with as many cows as possible. This is what I've heard. He doesn't realize that Krishna is beyond bribe and corruption. So as a king, his nuances and tactics failed. Even the countless advices given by Vidura, Bhishma, Drona did not find any effect on Dhritarashtra. So if at all, in our Purānās, if you ask, is there a king who has acted adversely to Rajya Dharmam? It is Dhritarashtra. The first verse and the last verse of Bhagavad Gita is neither of Arjuna or Krishna, if you've noticed. The first verse begins with Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. So he asks a question to Sanjaya. Kim Akurvata Sanjaya, what is happening? Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre, in the kshetra that is known to bless the recipient with dharma, which is called Kurukshetra, Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre, Samaveta Yuyutsavaha, the young ones are fighting. Mamaka, what are my children doing, my sons doing? Pandavaschaiva, what are Pandu's sons doing? What is so unique, sir? We have heard this sentence so many times. This one sentence is enough to say what his thought process was. If he thought he was the justful king of Hastinapura, he should have said, what are the sons of Dhritarashtra doing? He should have put the name in a third person. What are the sons of Dhritarashtra doing? What are the sons of Pandu doing? So there are two people, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Dhritarashtra's sons are Dhartarashtras. The sons of Pandu are Pandavas. What are the sons of Pandu called Pandavas? What are the sons of Dhritarashtra called Dhartarashtras doing? He should have asked. Or if he had thought himself to be the brother of Pandu, he should have said, what are my sons doing and what are my brother's sons doing? He did none. He rather asked, what are my sons doing and Pandu's sons doing? So he differentiated here. Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva Kimakuruvata Sanjaya. So this one verse of Bhagavad Gita demonstrates the foolishness of Dhritarashtra, and after having narrated the entire Bhagavad Gita, Sanjaya is asked again by Dhritarashtra, who will win this war? Sanjaya thought this man is incorrigible, irreversible and irreparable. He said, you know who can win this war? I do not know how to judge, but I've heard what my ancestors have said, Dhritarashtra. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishnaha yatra partho dhanurdharaha tatra Sri Vijayo bhuti dhruva nitir matir mama. This is what I understand, Dhritarashtra. Wherever the best of the archers called Arjuna, and wherever there is the best of yogic shastra practitioners like Krishna, there is where victory is. Even with the advice of Sanjaya, Vidura, Bhishma, Drona, nothing changed for Dhritarashtra. So how would Duryodhana be? A carbon copy of his father. Our analysis of this beautiful work Mahabharata is a lesson for us. So Duryodhana was a carbon copy. He was also jealous. He wanted the kingdom. While at least Pandu was made the king and Dhritarashtra wasn't, here it wasn't the case. One part of the kingdom called Khandava Prastha, which later became Indraprastha, which was initially a land infested with forests, animals, thorns, was given away to Pandavas. They of course made gold out of that uncultivable land with the help of Krishna. And that is when Duryodhana says, this kingdom should also belong to me. He was not of the opinion that let us rule separately happily. He wanted that entire kingdom of what Pandavas were ruling also for him. Absolutely greedy. Of course, a lot of the opinion makers state, no, he was very respectful. Otherwise, how he would have respected Karna? See, his acceptance of Karna, while all the princes were exhibiting their valor and strengths, was not to say that Karna, you're good. Because Karna challenged Arjuna, anybody's enemy, if being insulted, that person who insults becomes my friend. So this was the case. Duryodhana did not do it out of the great affection that he had. Of course, at a later stage, we find some bonding that happened between Duryodhana and Karna, like how it happened between Krishna and Arjuna. Incidentally, one poet says, when I look at the eyes of Mahalakshmi, the poet says, it seems to me superficially that Dhritarashtra is talking to Karna. But when I look closely, I find that Krishna is talking to Arjuna. This is what the Sanskrit poet Venkatadhvari Kavi says. How? Because drishti in Sanskritam means the process of seeing. Sight is drishti. So, the eyes that help in the process of seeing, in sight, is called as Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra means that which aids in the process of seeing. So eyes are referred to as Dhritarashtra. As per the ancient sciences that deal with the beauty of external beauty of men and women called Samudrika Lakshana Shastram, it says that the eyes that expand should extend till the ears. That's how beautiful a person could be. So here we have the eyes of Mahalakshmi that gradually enlarge and extend till the ears. So the ear that helps in hearing is called Karna. So Karnam, the ear, has relationship with the eyes, which is Dhritarashtra. How does it look? The point is Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra means the son of Dhritarashtra, which also means Duryodhana. So Duryodhana is referred to as Dhritarashtra. So the eye is like Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra. It extends till the Karna, ear. And when you look closely, the poet says you can see the mingling or the friendship between Krishna and Arjuna. Why? Because the white portion of our eye is referred to as Arjuna. Arjuna means something which is fair or white. Whereas the central portion of our eye, the ball, the black ball that you see, blackness is Krishna. So Krishna, black, is mingling with white Arjuna in Dhartarashtra Duryodhana, who touches Karna. So they played with words, but essentially they enjoyed a good relationship. Now, do we find Duryodhana elsewhere acting immaturely? Not immaturely. While he is believed to have fallen on the ground during Rajasuya Yajna, post Rajasuya Yajna and Indraprastha, it is said that Draupadi laughed at him. And this was brewing in the mind of Duryodhana, who wanted to avenge this, and that is why he caused all that happened, which is insult to Draupadi. Is this justifiable? No, because somebody insults you, you either keep quiet, fight with them, or leave it. You don't insult that person that the person can remember for the entire life. This is what he did to Draupadi. Duryodhana was also the epitome of jealousy. He wanted people to be subservient to him. He never wanted people to enjoy their comforts and riches. When Pandavas were housed in the forest for 12 years, he wants to see how the Pandavas are suffering, how Draupadi is suffering. He takes the entire battalion, an army, to the middle of the forest. He misbehaves with a Gandharva Kanya. He is tied to the flag post, and it is then when Yudhishthira dispatches Bhima and Arjuna to save him. So his acts of jealousy, arrogance, ego has never fetched him results. And his thought and action on Draupadi during the Vastrapaharana is unforgivable. Unforgivable. Well, if this is Duryodhana on one side, we also need to quickly understand Karna. Was Karna a person who was to be respected? Karna had a very troubled childhood. Even his birth, his very own mother Kunti, as an act of joy, play, she invoked Suryadeva, had a son with him, and put him into the waters, and that water, the casket flowed into the waters and was lifted by a charioteer and was brought up. Very sad. So he did not expect this abandonment in his childhood. But what happened later was absolutely in his hands. The moment he saw Duryodhana support him, he was enamored. He was absolutely enchanted. He thought, here is a person of that aristocracy who is supporting me, so I will give my life for him. But when he realized that what Duryodhana was doing wrong, he didn't even point out those mistakes. Rather, he kept supporting. We also get to know that Karna was very generous. His generosity is more of a modern adaptation. Yes, he was generous, maybe 1% more than most other kings, because kings in those days had abundant riches and they were generous. Of course, we do come across one major instance where he was supremely generous. Karna, right from his birth, had a kavacham and a kundalam, a great armor and pair of earrings that will give him a lot of strength as well as protect him from the fiercest of weapons. So in order to bring some shield to his son Indra, to bring shield to Arjuna, went in the disguise of a Brahmana, and as soon as the morning prayers were over and he stood before Karna and said, I need something. Karna said, ask whatever you want. He said, I need your kavacham and kundalam. This was one instance where he instantly cut it open with blood oozing from his chest and gave it to Indra. But was he a man of great character? No. During Vastrapaharanam, he also instigates and supports the process of stripping Draupadi, of taking away all her clothes. Was this right? No, not at all. And another portion where we come across Karna's jealousy is in the place where he fights Arjuna. He was so jealous that he wanted everything what Arjuna had. If Arjuna was probably the only one in the entire battlefield of Kurukshetra whose Sarathi, whose driver, was 1,000 times more intelligent, wisdom bred, more powerful, more strong, more charming than him. A driver is a driver, but here he had a king as a driver. So Karna thought, I too should have a driver who's as proficient or more proficient than me. That is when he complained to Duryodhana, and Duryodhana said, don't worry, I will plan for this. And he clandestinely entertained Shalya and the entire army from Madradesha, and finally said, you cannot find in the side of your nephews Sahadeva and Nakula, you have to fight from my side. And later came a day when Karna needed a driver, a charioteer to his chariot, and that is when Duryodhana goes and impresses upon Shalya and says, you will have to become the charioteer. There is nothing wrong. In those days, Brahma became the charioteer when Tripura Samhara happened of Lord Shiva. So Tripura Samharam episode comes in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Here it comes at a place where Duryodhana narrates Tripura Samhara. So we come across Karna as a person who was jealous minimally, angry minimally, but absolutely numb when it came to decisions, and he is or was generous, more generous than the other kings around, but not to the extent in which he has been praised by our commentators or by people who wrote Rāmāyana later. Now we are going to discuss another important character called Shakuni. Shakuni was a marriage gift of the king who came along with Gandhari. He could have still chosen to stay in his own country, but his avengeful attitude was, my sister was sought for that blind man by Bhishma. I will ensure that every generation of this king suffers. That is why he came along with Gandhari, stayed in Hastinapura, and ensured that there was massive destruction. Shakuni comes across to us as a person who doesn't even have an iota of mercy towards anybody. You can even attribute that one person mercy to anybody else, but not Shakuni. Shakuni was undoubtedly, if we have to critically analyze, undoubtedly one of the best strategists in Mahabharata. The results could have been awry, the results could have been wrong, but his strategy, his formulation, his way of treating each character, the way he wanted to attack every character was exemplary. But why don't we talk of Shakuni most? Why didn't his plan suffer? Why did his plan suffer? Because it was Shakuni's misfortune that during his time that he lived, where he wanted to showcase his strategy skills, he was unfortunately blessed with Krishna who was 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, lakh times more strategizing than Shakuni. So Shakuni couldn't find a match. He found a match which was absolutely matchless. So Shakuni's tactics did not work for that long for this reason. So if you have to put them all together, a Dhritarashtra whose carbon copy was Duryodhana whose blind follower was Karna, and at the same time their guide who was guiding them in possibly all the wicked intentions and directions was Shakuni. So these four, the quartet of Mahabharata, is a very disturbing, troubling quartet that we have ever seen.